Are night raids really better for finding blueprints in Arc Raiders? Well, to find the answer, I looted 1,000 containers on night raids, 1,000 on storm raids, and 1,000 on day raids, and the results were not what I was expecting whatsoever. Spoiler alert, no, night raids aren't better. Neither are storm raids. I'll explain everything in this video. First, here's how I collected my results. I did the exact same thing on every map. As soon as I spawned in, I'd run immediately to the best loot spot closest to me. I'd loot every single container type I saw before running to the next high tier zone, looting anything else I saw along the way. I split my time equally across all maps and made sure I looted an equal number of containers across all 3 map conditions. There were some rules I stuck to throughout the event. I did no key rooms, I did no Stella Montis, I did no uncovered caches, and no uncovered cache events. The reasons for why were on the screen. Besides these rules, I opened every single container type I came across, and I made no exceptions. Fun fact, you really can find blueprints almost anywhere. Computers, server cabinets, electrical boxes, and pretty much anything else. So after spending far too many hours gathering data, like literally 30 hours at this point, what did I find? Well, across a total of 3,001 containers looted, blueprints dropped 1.3% of the time. If we use the Wilson score interval, that gives us a margin of error of about 0.415%. So, if the specific drop rate of either storm raids, night raids, or day raids do not fall out of this range, we can confidently say the drop rate is likely to be the same across all maps. The blueprint drop rate I got in day raids was 1.26%, perfectly in the middle of the expected range. And the drop rate for the night raids was 1.29%, and for storm raids, 1.44%, easily within the margin of error. We can also use the chi-square test on these numbers, and we'll get a very high confidence that the blueprint drop rate for all 3 conditions is exactly the same. To put it more simply though, these are how many blueprints we found across all raid types. Yeah, I don't think I can make it any clearer. Day raids, night raids, storm raids, they all have the same blueprint drop rate. Alright, well, let's play devil's advocate for a second. Night raids are still better because they spawn more containers, right? Like, there's more stuff to actually loot per raid, so even if the drop rate was the same, you'd still come out with more blueprints. Well, I think that might actually be true. A little bit. But this is where it gets really interesting. Because everybody believes night raids drop blueprints more often, more people flock to night raids to look for blueprints, and we get a serious supply and demand issue. You'll find less containers to loot on night raids because more players will be looting instead of doing other tasks like finishing quests. PvP is higher as people fight for the better loot as well, and my data backs that up. Even though the drop rate across all raids was the same in my tests, I managed to find 13 blueprints in just 20 day raids. And for night raids, it took me 35 raids to find the same number of blueprints. I spent almost double the amount of real-life time to find the same number of blueprints on night raids. The average number of containers I was looting per match was much less in night raids. I'd either get caught up in fights because everybody was scrambling for loot and not willing to take chances on friendlies, or people would just get to the best loots before me because everyone was trying to spend their time looting in night raids, whereas on day raids people were doing other things. Which meant overall I'd have far more raids in nighttime spent wasting time looking around for containers when most of them had already been opened. Weirdly enough, in my tests, storm raids didn't have this problem. I think the common theory online was that night raids were the best for finding blueprints, and that's why I had such a problem finding anything to loot. Both day raids and storm raids didn't have that experience, and with storm raids I found 14 blueprints in 22 raids, which is pretty close to my experience with day raids. So we can now put that rumor to bed. It's not true at all. Night raids do not drop more blueprints, so don't waste your time scrambling over fights just to find more blueprints. If you want to find more blueprints specifically, as in increase the number that you're finding, instead of going into night raids, the best thing you can do is join the event that's most likely to have the least number of players actively looting. So you can have more loot spots to yourself, and then simply loot as many containers as you can. So, for example, this week's trials require damaging matriarchs and queens, so you can get a lot of free time to loot during these events. My best results often came from lush blooms though, because everybody was in a hurry to find enough money for the expedition, and people were busy farming fruit baskets because of that, meaning most of the map was free for looting. Now, you're probably also thinking, well, now that I've said all this information, this is all going to change, right? Maybe then night raids will be best, and maybe they will be. The truth is, if we can all spread out equally across all raids to loot for blueprints, then we'd all have a better time finding blueprints, instead of us all stacking into the same event to try and loot the same stuff. That's definitely the least productive thing for us all to do. The truth is, it doesn't matter where you loot, it doesn't matter what event. All that matters is that you get to the place you want to loot before the other player does. And that is how you'll find more blueprints. Okay, so does that mean night raids and storm raids are just pointless to find blueprints then? Well, definitely not, because each map condition or map area has different potential blueprint drops. My previous blueprint data had some great information on what blueprints are more likely to drop in what map conditions, and that data still remains true today. I've also come closer to understanding specific blueprint container loot pools. Be careful here, we're stepping into theory territory, right? We don't have data to back this part up, so keep that in mind, right? Keep this in mind. My best advice to you, if you're looking for a specific blueprint, is to ask the question, where would the developers put it? For example, if residential areas seem to spawn a lot of attachments, then it's a great chance they'd also spawn a lot of attachment blueprints. Every blueprint I found in Plaza Rosa Pharmacy during this test, a place infamous for dropping attachments, were blueprints for attachments. I found a defib blueprint in the hospital. I found weapons parts blueprints and augments in the security wing, the same place that spawns weapons and explosives. My theory is, and like I say, I don't have enough data for it yet, this is theory territory here, is that blueprint loot pools will closely follow the base loot pool for that specific container or area. If you're finding a bunch of weapons in a specific container, chances are you might find the Torrente or El Toro blueprint more often in that. And then extra rare blueprints are sprinkled into the mix as part of the map condition specific drops, like the Tempest for Night Raids, Snap Hook for Storm, Volcano for Hidden Bunker, Bobcat for Locked Gate, and so on and so forth. But wait, there's more. What about maps? Not map conditions, but maps. Is there a specific map that drops more blueprints or gives you more chance for more containers? Maybe? In fact, I try to make sure during my tests that I spent as equal amount of time on each map as possible. Not only did I split my time equally across day, night, and storm raids, I also equally split my time between Blue Gate, Buried City, Spaceport, and Dam, giving equal container loot between all storm, night, and day variants of all of the maps, besides Stella Montes, which we talked about. The results here are really interesting, but what I'm going to tell you is a double-edged sword, which is why I've put it at the end of this video so the fewer number of people see it to begin with. Basically, I looted Blue Gate, Buried City, Spaceport, and Dam a similar number of times, right? And we had a similar number of containers looted across Blue Gate, Spaceport, and Dam, with Buried City falling behind because it's just a PvP hot zone for whatever reason. Now, the number of blueprints I found across those maps, now bear in mind that I looted a similar number of containers across a similar number of raids. This is where it gets interesting. Spaceport and Buried City had the least number of blueprints, whereas Dam and Blue Gate had a massive, huge gap on both Spaceport and Buried City. Now, once again, I equally spent my time across storm, night, and day raids here. The number of containers per raid for Blue Gate and Dam was pretty good, whereas Spaceport, it was really amazing, but the drop rate for blueprints on Spaceport was terribly bad. And Buried City was just a horrible mess because we just kept dying. Overall, though, the drop rate for blueprints on Blue Gate was 2.13%, which is outside of the margin of error. Spaceport's drop rate was 0.66%. outside of the margin of error. Buried City and Dam, 1.4, 1.11. Dam seemed like straight in the middle. Buried City was pretty much in the middle as well. To me, what we can gain from this information is Dam is a really good map for finding blueprints, but Blue Gate seems to be the best map in the game for finding blueprints for whatever reason. The drop rate on that map specifically is incredibly high. And I think I have a theory as to why. Blueprint drop rates are not tied to the container. They are tied to the lootable item in each container. Every time you loot a specific item, right? One container may have 3 or 4 items on average. Each of those specific items could have a chance to be a blueprint. And Bluegate may just have more containers on average that have more lootable items per container, which just means by default, there's a higher drop rate on Bluegate. So there it is. If you want more blueprints, go to Bluegate. But now we have a problem. Everyone's going to be looting for blueprints on Bluegate. So in that case, go to Dam. But then everyone's going to loot blueprints on Dam. You see what I'm getting at here? Basically, here's the data for you. I guess the community will do with it what they will. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all in the comments. Cheerio.